The AFL-CIO is distributing a flyer saying John McCain is a patriot, but he is not a friend of working families. In Ohio, where you're going tonight, the service employees just went up with a television ad saying John McCain's health care plan will not help you, does not help working families. How do you cut through the messages of organizations that do have relationships with a lot of these working families? They're either in the unions or their parents are in the unions. How do you cut through when they're being told by their friends, if you will, that you're not to be trusted?
Well, John, I come from a right-to-work state, as you know, and I think it's one of the reasons why our economy has done well, and one of the reasons is because we've given our workers the right to choose. I respect the labor unions. I think they've done magnificent things for working men and women in this country, particularly in earlier times when the working men and women had very difficult and in some cases intolerable working conditions. We just have a disagreement, and I think that the American people will respond to plans such as mine on health care, where they make the decisions for themselves and their families. I think they will respond affirmatively when I tell them that I believe in free and fair trade, and that it's been good for America, and that protectionism and isolationism doesn't work. I think that the American people will believe me when I say that I want families to make decisions about their health care and not the government. And we'll have this debate. And I know that they're spending a lot of money on attacking me, and that's their right to do. But I think I can convince the majority of Americans. And one of our goals in this campaign is to get the old, quote, and the new Reagan Democrats. And I think we can do that, but I understand the opposition, and that's what campaigns are all about.
Senator Obama says he doesn't really think he has a problem. He thinks they just like Senator Clinton because of the Clinton years. They have an affinity for her, they know her, and that they would come his way in November. If you were sitting here and Senator Obama is your opponent, and this was a crowd of blue-collar workers, how would you tell them, I'm better than him because of these specific things for you?
Well, I want your family to make the decisions about your health care. I want you to have a $5,000 tax credit if you choose to take it, to go across state lines and choose the kind of health insurance you want for your family. I don't want to raise your taxes. 100 million Americans have some investment that would be affected by a near doubling of the capital gains tax, which Senator Obama wants. I have a philosophy that less government is better government, that there is a role for government to play, such as guaranteeing people the ability that deserve it to own their own homes and meet those payments. And I believe that there's many things that we can do to help Americans as a government, but raising their taxes is not one of them. And capital gains tax, which Senator Obama wants to raise, there is a history. Facts that ever since Jack Kennedy, that every time we've raised capital gains tax, every time we've cut capital gains tax, revenues have gone up. I mean, it's just a fact. So we'll be debating those issues.
So what are your thoughts on the Farm Bill? It's a tough one for somebody like yourself who doesn't like wasteful spending, doesn't favor subsidies in many cases, and yet if you go out into some of those states, some of which happen to be the states you were just mentioning that are very important come November, where people want help.
Well, I'm unalterably opposed to the Farm Bill. I think it rewards wealthy people. I think that there is programs such as nutrition and others that are very important and should be kept, but it's loaded down with the usual pork barrel projects, in fact, increased spending. I love American farmers. I think they're the most productive and most efficient in the world. And I don't think right now that certainly with food prices at an all-time high, that they are in need of further subsidies. I'd like to see us gradually decline those subsidies rather than increase them. And as you know, John, I went to Iowa and told them that I'm still opposed to ethanol subsidies, and I think my judgment has been rendered more correct as we've seen the market distorted as a result of ethanol subsidies and tariffs on imported ethanol. So I would veto the Farm Bill, and I am unalterably opposed to many provisions of it, particularly in these difficult economic times.
So you You said you didn't want to comment further, that Senator Obama will have a dialogue with the American people about Pastor Wright. Can I ask you to detach yourself from the moment, if you will, a little bit? You've run for president before, now you're running again. You know it's an interesting process, and sometimes people have to make a decision not only about...
Interesting is a good...
Yeah, a good word. It's a neutral word. Not only about what you propose, but who you are. And maybe it's a fundamental question, is who you are when you run for president. And if you're comfortable with who you are, then you'll worry about what you propose. Is it a fair judgment for an American voter, as they learn more and more about Pastor Wright, to say 20 years? He sat in this church for 20 years. He knew enough, or apparently was worried enough, to at the last minute disinvite Pastor Wright from giving the invocation at his announcement ceremony because he saw an article quoting some of these remarks. Is that a fair question for a voter to ask? Not, do you agree with what he said, because you've made clear you don't think he does agree with what Pastor Wright says, but how did you sit there? What kind of judgment does that show?
John, Senator Obama said that it was a, quote, issue that needs to be discussed with the American people. I agree with him, but I don't. I've made myself very clear that I don't believe he shares Reverend Wright's views, and I believe the issue is now between Senator Obama and the American people. I'm sorry, it's not a very complete answer, but it's just, this discussion needs to be made between the two of them. Senator Obama did state that it was a issue in the political realm, and so I'll let him respond to the Americans that have additional questions.